Welcome back everyone, and in this video tutorial I'm going to go over two different types of content, PHET simulation and Nearpod VR, or what they call Nearpod field trip. So let's get started. As you can see, I'm still under the add content menu, and for the first one we're going to go over the PHET simulation. And if you're unfamiliar with PHET simulations, they're basically labs or simulations. That way students can experiment with both math and science. And as you can see, you can actually go down and drill down by category. So if I wanted to do something with elementary school students for math, like for example an area model, I can do that. I can preview it, I can add it to the lessons, and then when I do that, students will actually be able to interact and experiment with those particular simulations. So go through and play around with these. There are some really good ones for math and science, so if you're a teacher in one of those two disciplines or you're elementary, feel free to play around in here. Now this is really cool because you can actually interact with them, and the kids can do this at their own pace. I actually created a great lesson that I delivered to some elementary students with circuits and series circuits and parallel circuits, so it was really neat to see that and have the kids interact with them. So go through here, and I'm going to grab one. I'm going to grab an elementary science one, circuit construction. Here we go. So if I grab this one here and I preview it, it's going to load. It's actually one of the features that's a paid feature, but because you guys have an NEISD license with Nearpod, you have access to this. So you can place batteries in here, put a light bulb, and let's say that I wanted to add a switch to turn things on and off. So you just literally drag things over and get them going to how you want these to interact with. I'm sorry, how you want your students to interact and what you want the students to get out of them. So go ahead and play around with these. These are the PHET simulations, and they're available for both math and science from within your Nearpod library now. So I'm going to go ahead and add that by clicking done. Now the students can actually play around with that feature, and that's the PHET simulation. And as I said earlier, we're also going to go through the Nearpod VR or Nearpod field trips, and that too is under content. Remember, everything we're doing now in this first module is going to be all content related. So now we're going to go through the field trip, and as you can see, it pulls up interactive 360-degree photos from a repository, which is actually 360cities.com. If you're unfamiliar with 360cities.com, it's literally a repository, an online website where the public can actually upload 360-degree photos that have been taken with phones or 360-degree cameras and drones and things like that, and they get vetted through the website 360 Cities. So as long as the resource you want to pull is from within here, it'll actually be embedded within Nearpod. Now, some people see these first, 25, 30 and think, wow, that's pretty cool. However, that's all that's available. No, this is kind of like they're featured. You could search for anything you want here. So I'm going to go ahead and search for, let's look for Egypt. I'm going to type in Egypt, and here are all the 360-degree VR photos that I could pull in from Egypt. So I'm going to go ahead and pull in this Pyramids of Giza. But before I pull anything in, I want to preview it. So it's going to pull that up. It's going to render that image. And remember that when students are actually viewing this on their device, if they're interacting with your lesson from a Chromebook or a browser, for example, in the VDI lab or a Chromebook or a Lenovo ThinkPad, then they would have to do as I'm doing here, and they would have to click and drag on the trackpad to get that effect. If they're interacting on an iPad or a mobile device, in other words, from an app, from the Nearpod app, they would literally pick up the device and move it around 360 degrees, and it would move with them because it's a 360-degree photo. If you have VR headsets in your class, or you have access to these VR headsets with mobile devices, there's actually a VR logo when you get to this slide, and if the students click on it and pop those inside VR headsets, they can be fully immersed with a virtual reality field trip, which is why Nearpod calls those for virtual reality field trips. So I went ahead and added that to my lesson, and now I've pulled it in. So as you can see, we added two different features in the content, the PHET simulation for math and science, and a virtual field trip. So play around with those two features and add them to your lesson that you're going to be creating. And feel free to ask any questions in the Google Classroom. But for right now, I want you to play around with those and get a feel for them. That way, you're more familiar and comfortable with using these two content features within your own Nearpod lesson.